It's important to understand what makes one typeface more legible than another. When choosing a typeface, it all depends on how you plan to use it. Ask yourself some basic questions. What size will the text be used at? Will it appear as body paragraph or a headline? Does it need to be a workhorse, or will it be used more as eye candy? Will it be paired with another font? Does the appearance of the typeface complement the subject content? The first thing to look for in a font is legibility. Text is meant to be read, and if it feels hard to read, people simply won't want to read it. When we read, we don't read every letter. We read the shapes of words. These shapes are primarily created by two things: the strokes that make the letters and the spaces in and around the letters. So what makes a font legible? Open spaces and healthy strokes. Screens have lower resolution compared to printed text on paper. We need to be more sensitive to spaces and strokes for web-based typography. It's easier for them to get lost on the screen, so we need to start by finding a legible font. Things to look for in a legible font are size or X height. That's the height of the lowercase x. You can see how it's higher in Arial than in Times New Roman. Even though they are both set at the same size, the Arial looks larger and the spaces in the lowercase letters feel more generous due to the X height. These spaces inside the letters are called counterforms. Legible fonts have open apertures. That's the opening in letters like C, A, and E. See how it's bigger in Verdana? An open aperture creates more visual space. Slightly loose letter spacing also promotes legibility. The text in Verdana is clearer to read. Generous bowls also help provide legibility. The bowl is the shape of the rounded forms in the lowercase letters. If a bowl is too narrow, the counterforms are too small. If it's too round, the counterform gets too big. Look for a bowl that provides a good balance. Also related to bowls and counterforms are shoulders. Shoulders are where the curved line meets the stem of the letters, like H, D, N. The stem is the straight vertical stroke in a letter. See how Verdana's shoulders make the counterforms feel a little bigger? This helps keep the counterforms open even at smaller sizes and on lower resolutions. A legible font has protruding ascenders and descenders. Ascenders are strokes that extend above the main line. Descenders are strokes that extend below the baseline. Slightly longer ascenders and descenders, or having serifs on the ascenders and descenders, can help make the shapes of the words more noticeable. Serifs are the small strokes coming off the ends of stems in some fonts. These are called serif fonts. The fonts without serifs we call sans serif fonts. Does a legible font need serifs? One common misbelief is that text should be set in a serif font because it's easier to read, and sans serif should be used for headers. This isn't necessarily true. Both serif and sans serif fonts can be legible or lack legibility. Here, Verdana is more legible for text than Times New Roman. Strokes and spaces are much more important than serifs when it comes to how easy a font is to read. Let's look at the Georgia font, a more legible serif font than Times New Roman. A legible font has recognizable terminals. Terminals are the ends of strokes on letters like A, R, and F. Some terminals have a pen or ball form shape. Other terminals don't have any extra shape to them. Having a bit of shape can help readers differentiate between the letters and the text. Legible fonts have generous strokes. If strokes are too thin, they are hard to find. If they are too thick, you run the risk of losing spaces in the letters. Here the thick stroke stands out, while the thin strokes and serifs basically disappear. A font with a very thin stroke is also difficult to read. Finally, let's take a look at contrast. Contrast is an important factor in how easy it is to read text. You want to avoid making your web visitors squint or feel the need to put on sunglasses when they visit your site, and you can do that by choosing suitable background and foreground colors. Performance is best when contrast levels between text and background exceed 70%. Obviously, this is only a small list, but the key point to remember is you want to avoid making it difficult for readers. Always ensure that there is enough contrast between text and its background. As web designers, we have hundreds of fonts that we can access. Not all are practice proper legibility standard. Look for a font that practices these standards so you and your users will be happy.